What if Ho-Oh was in Gen 1 OU? Now this was a one that I was very interested to go over, but then once I actually made the replays, that's when I realized, okay, this is a weird one. A really, really weird one. Where its signature move, the one that gives it a very unique playstyle compared to other fire types, makes all of its matchups incredibly weird. I don't really know how to explain it until we actually see the replays, but the best way to describe it is inconsistent at worst, but at best, I like to describe it as a game of chicken. Do you know that game? Where it's like, you're basically daring someone to do something very dangerous, and it's basically just a game of who blinks first, in a way. That's the best way I can describe Ho-Oh. It's just very strange. So, going on to the actual Pokemon itself, which we will learn why it's so weird later, I'm not even gonna bother going over these stats. These stats are just really, really, really good. But funny enough, because of its really bad defensive typing, and yes, even in Gen 1, it was a bad defensive typing, the stats ironically just hold it, or they don't hold it back, it's actually the opposite, where its typing holds it back in a lot of ways. So its stats, and its incredible bulk, with, 110 to 154 special, 106 HP, and 90 defense, just keeps it from being, obliterated from everything. So that's weird. But also, the reason why its typing is bad is not the same reason for, any, Pokemon, or any fire flying type, Gen 4 and onwards, because there's no Stealth Rock. It in both Gen 2 OU and Gen 3 OU, Fire Flying's actually a really good typing. It's bad here because it has even more weaknesses. Because Fire doesn't resist Ice yet. So not only is it weak to Blizzard, but it's also weak to Water, Electric, Rock. Very, very, very common attacking types in Gen 1. Or, yeah, right on everywhere, so I guess you can say Rock is common too. So, its stats are great. The typing holds it back, which ends up making it feel very even. What about its moves? They're good. It does have some things that I really wish it had. Like, for example, it really wish it had Body Slam. But it's not the worst thing in the world. It's a very usable moveset. With its 130 attack, Earthquake will be its main attacking move. But it has Fire Blast, which is good, especially in Gen 1, where it, has a 30% chance to burn. However, it also has Sacred Fire, which I allowed it to have for this video, which is better, but I'll go over that later. It has Psychic, and while the special drop is nice, I don't really see you using it a lot. Recover is absolutely amazing. It definitely helps it out a lot, and helps it, take on a lot of these Pokemon that give it a hard time, such as Starmie. It could theoretically help you stall against Rhydon, etc. Which also means there's no reason to really consider Rest, because Recover is just better. Now Sacred Fire is a 50% chance to burn instead of a 30%, but it's also not 100% accurate like Flamethrower. But speaking of 100, it's a little bit weaker in this gen, so it's just base 100, not 130 base power like Fire Blast. Now obviously, you're always going to use Sacred Fire over Fire Blast, but maybe I just got incredibly unlucky with these replays, but you'll see that it's just weird when determining how this does against the other Pokemon in the meta. Now Hyper Beam, it also learns, and that's one of its really good coverage options if it just wants to hit just a little bit harder against a very powerful, like a Pokemon that have high special, such as Alakazam or Chansey. Or in all honesty, you're mainly using it for Alakazam. Because otherwise, I believe Earthquake is a 3-hit to 4-hit KO. I'm pretty sure it's 3-hit. But we'll recheck when I go to the Alakazam replay. And the last relevant move is Thunderbolt. Even with 110 special, it hits pretty hard. That is a little bit harder than Starmie. I'm trying to remember if there's any Pokemon in Gen 1 with 110 base special exactly. I don't remember off the top of my head. I apologize. But, you know, I was literally taking a vacation from these, like, videos for, like, almost a month. So I feel like I'm a little bit rusty. But either way, hits really hard. And it helps you tremendously against the water types. So in reality, Ho-Oh's main moveset is, like, probably Sacred Fire, Earthquake, obviously Recover. These are the main 3 that you always have. I feel like no matter what, Psychic isn't really worth it. Doesn't really hit anything super hard. And a special drop is nice. But when do you really need that? At least with Ho-Oh. Because then you're only really hitting harder with Sacred Fire. But Sacred Fire only has 8 power points. And way more importantly, you would rather use it for the burn chance rather than just being a powerful stab option. Which means your final move will either be Hyper Beam, in order for you to better take on Alakazam and Chansey, or Thunderbolt, or I guess technically Thunder too, to take on the water types. If you ask me, Thunderbolt is way better and helps you out a lot more than just having Hyper Beam. Because even without Hyper Beam, Earthquake hits decently hard, and if you manage to get a burn with Sacred Fire, you could, like, theoretically, like, do a better job at, like, beating Alakazam in Star War. But in reality, the Alakazam matchup would be more so just you recovering until you hopefully get a crit with Earthquake. But, I really can't really just describe how Ho-Oh would actually do. It's just one of those cases where you need to see the replays, just to understand just how weird this Pokemon is when talking about its matchups. So let's do that, shall we? Always, we gotta start off with the boy himself, Tauros. And Paralysis the Body Slam is annoying. Unfortunately, because of the lower base power, Sacred Fire isn't a 2-hit KO. And yeah, Critical Hyper Beam obviously just kills you. And that resisting normal is definitely a big issue. So what happens if you actually get the burn? Oh, well, obviously you do tremendously better. It still hits hard, which is unfortunate. And you're still not even guaranteed to actually get a burn. But that's a good reason for you to have Recover. It helps you out a lot. And you still have Blizzard on Tauros. It can still crit. And as you can see here, it can still freeze you. Which, it's just annoying. Like, yep. There's also a lot of other replays I had. I do not know why, but making these replays, Ho-Oh just got so unlucky. Which you really hate to see. But yeah, even with the burn, Tauros can still hold its own against you. So it could go either way. But it's one that, despite these replays, is definitely in Ho-Oh's favor. Because Tauros would never actually want to risk a 50% burn chance. But I'm not sure if Ho-Oh would ever consider Fire Blast. Because now I'm honestly wondering if it would because of the higher base power. And it probably does. And also, yeah, Paralysis is annoying. And Snorlax is just as likely to take it down. So that's sad. Also, I never actually bothered doing a replay with Amnesia Snorlax. Because I just forgot to. So I'm just going to rely on one of you to let me know how that matchup does in the comments. But I'm assuming it's heavily in Snorlax's favor. Also, just a reminder, even with the burn, like, if you use Rest, I'm pretty sure, still keep the attack debuff, which is very unfortunate, it definitely means that Ho-Oh has a pretty good matchup against physical Snorlaxes, but Snorlax is still very tanky. It has a lot of opportunities to paralyze Ho-Oh, but at the very least, if you burn the Snorlax, it has no real way of really killing you. So the main one that can actually kill you is a non-burn Snorlax that paralyzes you and gets a Hyper Beam off, or Amnesialax, which Amnesialax probably does just absolutely obliterate Ho-Oh. And then Chansey is interesting, albeit a very slow and very stally matchup, because it has super effective coverage against you, but you also have Recover, which is better than Soft Boiled. However, you don't have a way to paralyze Chansey. And I think that's like the one thing that Ho-Oh really wishes it had. It wishes it either had Body Slam to, try to fish for paralysis, or it wishes it had just Full on Thunder Wave. Which I'm not sure if it would make sense for it to have, but at the very least, it would make what you're seeing here way more bearable. Ho-Oh has a lot more recovery, and it's very tanky, so unless Chansey gets a crit, Ho-Oh can probably outlast the Star War, because all it really needs is just either a chance to burn the Chansey, which you don't really want a burnt Chansey, but if you really are in a situation like this where it's a 1v1, you would rather get some sort of chip on Chansey. That way you can do some progress when you're recovering, or you're helping to put Chansey in a damage range, which it doesn't work in Fire Spin. Ho-Oh really wishes it did work Fire Spin, but since it can't, this is its only other way of getting chip damage in. Which is unfortunate, because for the most part, like, spamming fire moves kinda hurts you, since Freeze is very powerful, and you don't want to thaw things out, and you also don't want things burned, because then it can't get paralyzed, put to sleep, or frozen itself. So, you could probably see right now just why it's such a weird situation for Ho-Oh. And also, we should probably just go over, like, OU, or Uber's stuff with Mewtwo. Yeah, it's an absolutely abysmal matchup, as you can imagine. Mewtwo would love to get burned, so you dare not ever use Sacred Fire. So you have, like, nothing that can really hurt Mewtwo. Mewtwo can just recover. And I'm just gonna make the hot take now, that after doing this replay, I fully believe that Ho-Oh would be fine in just regular OU. So I'm not even sure if it's even worth just having it for Ubers, because I feel like it would just really slow you down. I just feel like it wouldn't really do much on an actual Ubers team. Which, you guys let me know what you think in the comments, but like, go see more of these replays. And even with Mew, a physical attacker, one that's entire gimmick is using Sword Stance. Sacred Fire being a 50% chance to burn, you just wish it was guaranteed, because you're gonna look and see how unlucky, like, Ho-Oh is here. But even if it did get lucky, Mew can just easily just, use Sword Stance again. So, it doesn't even matter in the long run. It can still have, like, some pretty good attack. Not to mention, with Body Slam, it can eventually paralyze Ho-Oh. But luckily, with how, like, bulky Ho-Oh is, and with Recover, it still has better longevity than Mew. And unless Mew uses Explosion, it probably does win the 1v1. However, that does include Mew draining a lot of Ho-Oh's resources, and definitely leaving the Ho-Oh, paralyzed. Which is annoying. But also, with Recover and with how bulky Ho-Oh is, it's a lot like Starmie, where it doesn't really care that much about paralysis a lot, because it probably could outlive it. Not so much Rest, or not Rest, as Sweeping, because of just Ho-Oh's bad defensive typing. So it's weird. But you can probably now see where I'm going for, or what I'm talking about, when I'm talking about, like, Ho-Oh's matchups being like a game of chicken. Because so many of these seem like it just depends on if it gets burned or not. Without the burn, Ho-Oh seriously... Okay, yeah, I was right about, like Earthquake being a 3-hit KO. Sorry for like getting distracted there, squirrel brain. But yeah, like so many of these rely on just Ho-Oh getting a burn, which is just really sad. And now that I'm actually rewatching this replay, I'm not gonna say the Hyper Beam is just not needed on Ho-Oh at all. Because if you actually get a single burn with Sacred Fire, then Earthquake becomes a consistent 2-hit KO. So, I actually feel like that does probably put... Or actually no, Alakazam still paralyzes, it still crits, it has recovered itself. I was almost about to say maybe you can put Alakazam in a good matchup, but no, it's definitely still Quickly either way. It's a very annoying Pokemon for Ho-Oh to face against. And it doesn't even really want to use Sacred Fire in the first place. Because if it doesn't get a burn, you pretty much just wasted your time. It's a free turn for Alakazam where it can just recover off the damage, if it even needs to. Then Gengar is interesting. Thunderbolt is a 4-hit KO. Obviously, Earthquake does most of your damage. So the matchup just depends on if Gengar lands a Hypnosis or not. Which it very well can. And with its fast speed and good chance for critting, it also can just threaten Ho-Oh either way. So, interesting. Very, very interesting. And not one where Gengar needs to put Ho-Oh in, or where it needs to be asleep in order to actually do something. And then Ho-Oh versus Cloyster. There's Clamp, and if you get a critical Clamp, that's obviously very bad. But for the most part, you're almost always going to have Thunderbolt, so it's a clean 2-hit KO. And even without it, like Sacred Fire does about as much to Cloyster as Earthquake does to Alakazam. So if you get the burn, it just becomes a 2-hit KO. But you should just use Thunderbolt for the most part. Especially since a crit is always a KO, which I'm not even sure if it would be for Sacred Fire. I imagine not. And then Jolteon, it's just seeing who can crit each other first for the most part. Ho-Oh technically wins the 1v1. When you're in low health like that, it's going to make it very hard for you to find an opening to actually recover off the damage. So, could go either way, but in most cases, unless Ho-Oh gets a critical Earthquake, Jolteon's usually the victor. Well, at the very least, if Jolteon doesn't just OHKO with Thunderbolt, it's putting Ho-Oh in a situation where it's probably gonna get revenge killed. And I paused it because I want you to guess right now. Does Ho-Oh get the burn on Rhydon? Put it down in the comment below, and don't you dare edit your comment the moment like you see if you're right or wrong. So Sacred Fire does not get the burn, but luckily it got it missed its Rock Slide, which, as you can see there, it would have OHKO'd Ho-Oh, which doesn't surprise anybody. But with the burn, Ho-Oh is completely capable of outstalling Rhydon. But as you can see, Rock Slide is still doing more damage than Recover is, recovering. But this is one of those cases where Rhydon getting chipped with Fire or Fire Burn, or just Burn, I don't know why I can't talk right now. But it's one of those cases where Rhydon getting chip damage actually is really relevant. Because now it would allow Ho-Oh to keep recovering off the damage and put Rhydon in a range where it can actually kill with Earthquake. So definitely not what I would have expected. It's definitely really interesting. But I honestly feel like Rhydon probably does go for it no matter what. So Ho-Oh really doesn't rely on a 50% chance to, be able to beat Rhydon. You do not feel comfortable at all. And also, for a reminder, you've seen now that even with the 50%, there's going to be turns where the Pokemon doesn't get the burn. And Ho-Oh definitely needs pretty much all of these Pokemon to get burned in order to actually win the 1v1. But Sacred Fire only has 8 power points, and it's not even guaranteed. So, it's not a bad Pokemon, definitely not. But I think you can understand why I think Ho-Oh would be fine in OU, and it would not cause any significant changes in the tier. In fact, I'm not even sure how often it would be used. And then with Swellow, it's very dangerous, but luckily Ho-Oh hits hard and has a good crit rate. So you don't feel comfortable very much, but you have a few opportunities to actually get the crit on Swellow, so it's not unwinnable. And I think Swellow needs 2 Amnesias to always OHKO. I could be wrong, but someone could just like give it the damage calcs below. And then with things to Starmie, yeah, I don't know why I was brain farting the name. This one's also interesting because you don't use Surf on Starmie that much, but you do over Thunderbolt and Blizzard. But both Pokemon have Recover, and Ho-Oh's Thunderbolt hits really hard. It's pretty much, it just is a 2-hit KO on Starmie. But at the same time, Starmie has a better crit rate, but also, like, it needs 2 crits to actually kill Ho-Oh. And again, with Recover. So who actually wins this? I'm sure there's definitely scenarios where Starmie wins, especially with Thunder Wave, because if Ho-Oh like misses any like turns due to full paralysis, that probably gives Starmie the edge it needs to actually win. But at the same time, Ho-Oh is gonna have a lot of opportunities to use Thunderbolt, which means not only would a crit itself just OHKO Starmie, but there's also that 10% chance of Starmie getting paralyzed, which also tremendously helps Ho-Oh out as well. And last but not least, we always end with Zapdos. And very ironic since Ho-Oh's counterpart, Lugia, is the master of the legendary birds. But Ho-Oh just does like absolutely nothing to Zapdos. It can't use Earthquake. Zapdos doesn't care about the burn. At least when it comes to fighting, like, Ho-Oh. But spoiler alert, using Sacred Fire to burn the Zapdos so that Executor could theoretically fight Zapdos is not a good trade, really. And with no Earthquake, not Sacred Fire not hitting hard, Zapdos just always wins, and there's nothing Ho-Oh can do about it. So that's that. Here we have the tier list. And like I said before, pretty much all of Ho-Oh's matchups is just a big game of chicken, which makes sense considering it is just a big chicken. So that's why almost every single one of his matchups is could go either way. And if you have this many, where the matchup lives or dies on if Ho-Oh gets a burn, and if you're supposed to be able to take on multiple Pokemon, I think Ho-Oh is really underwhelming. I still don't think it's bad, because it's still bulky, has great recovery, decent move pool, and it just hits hard. But it would not be Ubers. It definitely wouldn't be. Now with tomorrow's video with Lugia probably will be a Ubers Pokemon, and that would be very interesting to go over. But at least here, with Sacred Fire not being as strong as it is in other generations, and especially not having Flying Stab, Ho-Oh is in a weird spot. But it's also not the worst position it could possibly be in. But what do you think? Do you think Ho-Oh would still be Ubers? Or do you think it would actually be like full-on garbage in Ubers? Do you think any of these matchup spreads are wrong? Do you disagree with the tier list? And what would you like to see next? I was going to do the Tapus, and I still will, but I think I'm going to wait till January 1st, or just sometime in the new year to actually start them. I'm going to finish Lugia tomorrow, but then I think I'm going to go over 2 other Pokemon that no one has asked for, but I do think would be very, very interesting. So be on the lookout for that. Thank you all for watching. This is Groundback, and until next time, I look forward to hearing from you.